Hey there guys, DMO73 here. I am back and we are getting a new feature match for you guys, looking at all these new rulers that we just have come out. I am playing a kind of sort of mono white Milium deck that I call Tale of the Sun. It is, new fairy tales, and I am playing against my pal Ralph, who is playing a green void red Machina list he calls Sprinting Machines. So it's a very interesting kind of updated Machina list, using some of the new cards from Battle for Adaraktia and Curse of the Frozen Casket. So it was pretty cool. I thought you guys might want to check it out. So we're just going to go ahead and dig right in. Ralph is going to be on the play because he wants to try to sprint and hit my face as fast as possible. So let's see how this goes. So I'm playing Milium, as I said, and I have my Energized token, which is going to be my one free white will that I can use later. He starts with a Sacred Elf, the kind of classic turn 1 play for Machina. Out comes that Wendy, one of our new fairy tales. Now, because I have just basic white stones, she is a 4/5, which is really good for a 1-drop. And then every single time a fairy tale gets played, she'll untap, which is also kind of a big, kind of main component of the deck. And then Ralph's gonna search at the end of my turn for that Clockwork Soldier using his Sacred Elf. Moving into Ralph's turn, he goes ahead and gets another stone, gets another basic green. Out comes out that Mary Bella, the assistant. Now his deck is, what he's trying to do essentially with this is he wants to put pressure on the board while also just searching for his combo pieces so that he can combo off later. So Mary Bella is a good play to help him do that because it also prevents me from getting in damage. Because if I go for damage, he just blocks with Mary Bella and gets to search for more combo pieces, which is less ideal. I'm going to play Red Riding Hood. She's not little anymore. And I play her to be able to help me ramp up a little bit. In the same kind of way as his Mary Bella helps him search, my Red Riding Hood is designed to help me kind of ramp up. Because when she dies, I get a stone. So it's the same kind of thing. I'm preventing him from putting in pressure while increasing my chances of getting to my kind of combo out. And there's no point in me attacking because I don't want him to search for a free card. So Ralph draws into turn, and taps for stone and hits that Blasting Waves. So the reason for the Blasting Waves is because he tries to play a Library of Alexandria, which you're going to see right there, or I think that's what it's called. Or the Fairy Tale Library or something. And so he calls machines with this. And this is where the sprinting comes in. So with this, it's a different way to give all of his machines swiftness. So typically we've always seen Machina play a bunch of cards off the flip and then cast sprinting of the machines or whatever, the spell, off the top. And that because you have so many things, so it becomes super cheap. This is a different way for him to do that. It's less mana intensive, and it's a natural ramp up to the combo, so he doesn't have to worry about having that card in his hand or having enough machines to trigger it off. This is just natural, and he can continue to put pressure on board through that way. So I don't necessarily remember why he took that back. Or why I let him take that back, but he did. He took back the Clockwork Soldier and instead played Clockwork Scout Plane, and then he swings with Mary Bella, And then this is actually pretty advantageous to me because I'm thinking about it, but if I just block with Little Red here, I get to ramp up, but he doesn't get to search because Little Red is just a 3/4, so it's not a trade. So that means that I get to push ahead in my combo, and he doesn't get to, and I don't take the damage. So that ended up working pretty well for me. So what I'm gonna do here is he's gonna swing with Clockwork Scout Plane, and I'm gonna use Energize on to use Dreams of Flight and roll that die. I only get a 1, but that's okay. So she has Wendy has flying and a +1/+1 for the turn, so she's now a 5/6, which means that she can kill that Clockwork Scout Plane without dying. So that was pretty good for me. I got to get rid of 2 cards, and now his Sacred Elf is actually pretty vulnerable. So I have kind of an opening here that I can take advantage of. I don't necessarily, I mean, all of that was good play from Ralph. He had no way of knowing that I had the Dreams of Flight. I honestly kind of thought that playing the Clockwork Soldier might have been still the better option, because then he could have left up a stone to be able to search again, and also now his Sacred Elf wouldn't be as vulnerable, because now at this point I'm going to be able to kill that Sacred Elf and put him behind, so it essentially sends him 1 turn back in terms of combo, and I've now ramped ahead of him. So essentially I was on the draw, and now I'm 1 stone ahead, which is very, very odd position for him to be in. And I'm actually going to be able to set up a pretty nice defense here by using Wendy to kill the Sacred Elf, and then I play another Fairy Tale, any Fairy Tale, probably a Little Red or something to be able to recover it. And now I have 2 blockers kind of sitting on board. I'll also talk about the fact that I really like Milium's search spell. Being able to grab any 2 Fairy Tales from your deck and just put them in your hand for 2 is really, really good. It lets you really add a lot of consistency to the deck without being too overpowered, I think. So out comes that Little Red again, or Red Riding Hood again, which then means my Wendy's untapped. So I'm again in a position where all of my creatures are safe. I've got a blocker to be able to deal with Maribella that ramps my combo while stopping his combo without helping him get to more of his combo pieces. And because I killed the Sacred Elf, he has to tap for stone, so it pushes back his time 1 entire turn because he has to get to that 4th stone. So out comes the Sacred Elf. There's the Clockwork Soldier. And for 2 more, because he has 2 creatures, he can pull out the Machine. So Maribella's going to swing in. I'm going to accept the 500 damage. That's fine. I'm going to block the bigger guy and get a trigger with Red Riding Hood, so pushes me up to 5 stones. He's going to think about swinging in, but he's like, whoa, that's really probably a bad idea because Wendy's just going to kill it, so there's no point in that. So he just passes the turn at that point, which makes sense. Wendy's a 4/5, you're a 3/3, and he has no way to bump it up. So going into my turn, I'm sitting at 5 stones. So again, I'm still, even though I'm on the draw, I'm still ahead of him in will, which is a really good position for me to be in. So at this point, I have to consider whether or not I have to push for aggression or try and bait out the combo and have an answer to something. So I'm going to swing in his face for 4. So he's a 4/5. So he's going to go ahead and say, I'm gonna pump up my Clockwork Soldier and then trade with your Wendy. Well, in response to the block, so what I'm doing here is in response to the block, I'm going to go ahead and cast the Dreams of Flight from my graveyard because it does have Remnant. So it's a 5/5, but I'm going to roll a dice and become a 10/11. This works out really well for me because, again, he's opened himself up here to a line of play. So now I get a Peter Pan, which will trigger Wendy, and she'll recover. And then I get to go in and grab another 1-drop Fairy Tale and put it onto the board. And now I'm going to be able to kill his Sacred Elf too. And again, I'm pushing him back in terms of his combo ramp. And now that Peter Pan's also on the board, I can leave Wendy's tapped because they are protected as long as Peter Pan's on the board. They can't be attacked as long as I have Peter Pan. And also, they get flying as long as I have Peter Pan on the board. So again, this is kind of a natural acceleration of the combo to kind of push towards lethal, and I'm going to be able to make really good use of those Wendy's now, especially sitting on 2, and they're both 4/5s, which can, especially since they untap, can be a lot of damage pretty quick. Then I'm going to go ahead and kill his Sacred Elf there as well. Now, I could have killed the big, the kind of dragon machine thing, but that would have been a trade, which is less ideal. And even though he is gonna, if he combos out here, he does tap out, and I do have a response to kind of mess with his combo in my hand. So that's why I'm saying, well, I can accept 8 damage, that's fine, and I'll be able to kind of push really intensely next turn, kind of as a massive crackback if he does try to combo out. So thankfully that works out in my favor. He is going to go ahead and do Judgment, and in response I'm going to use Power Manifestation to destroy his addition. So he's already committed at this point to the combo, but now none of the machines that he brings in are going to have swiftness. So it's just a big plop down on the board, and if he doesn't have anything that has flying, then he's kind of out of luck because those Wendy's are going to be able to push for a lot of damage starting next turn. So he's looking at his hand, trying to figure out what he wants to bring in. Brings in Maribel Self-Aware Machine, Power Supply Team, and a Magic Screw onto the big old dragon. So it's a 14/14 because it gets +6/+6. And that is really painful. So he's gonna swing in for 5 first. And I think about that, and I'm thinking, and I decide to block the Maribella. So if Maribella's a 5/5, Peter Pan is a 5/6. So he is going to get to search, but at that point it really doesn't matter. Now, this could have ended badly for me if I was in the position, if I was in Ralph's position. It's kind of like I might just go ahead and try to clear my board, take care of my creatures rather than go face. Especially since that Peter Pan's taking damage, because that means that he can untap it and then kill one of my Wendy's, and now my Wendy's don't have flying and lots of possible things. But it's kind of an interesting scenario here, rather than just pushing for all of that damage. But I can also see where Ralph would say, he's got the Pierce from Maribella and everything else, so it's kind of like if he can just get me super low, it's probably going to be good enough anyway. So he's going to swing for 14. I'm going to take that damage 100%, going on to 21, and he uses Power Supply Team to untap and then attack again. Puts me down to 700. I accept all that damage. Totally fine with it. So then he just passes at that point because he has nothing else he can play. So again, this is the situations that having it, again, like I said before, he doesn't have any flying, so that is very advantageous to me. So I'm going to swing for 800, taking him down to 32. Call for a stone. I'm up to 7 stones now. Now my Red Riding Hood comes out. She's a 7/7 with swiftness, first strike, and target attack. My Wendy's recover, and I do 800 more damage. I'm gonna play Hook. I'm gonna bounce his 2 creatures back to his hand and get my Wendy's recovered. So now both of those machines, I've got an answer to his Machina, and all of his machines are back in his hand. And if he wants to try to play something, it kind of pretty much taps him out, and he's got no swiftness. So the Wendy's are going to swing again, as is the Peter Pan, for an extra 1300 damage, taking him down to 11. Now I've got 2 strong blockers out on the field to be able to protect myself for the rest of this time. So like I said, pretty big crack back there, and honestly pretty safe, because Machina usually doesn't have any kind of way to remove creatures. It's about just pressure on the board. So leaving up a Hook and a Red Riding Hood, even though I'm at 700 life, is pretty safe here. The kind of best thing that he could hope to do would be to tap for a stone, play another library, and use the Maribella from his grave to play Insane Self-War Machine. That's probably his strongest play here, and then swing face. But the most that's gonna do is 200 because I'll just block with Hook. Yep, and like I said, the Maribella's gonna come out, or Maribella's gonna get used, so that Maribella's cheaper. But he had no library here, so that doesn't help him at all. Because again, I'm just gonna fly over him. Swings for 800. I have to block that, so I block with Hook. His Machina gets killed. And I see the reason he did that. I mean, he has to try to push through for lethal or something else. And then he goes ahead and searches for 1, which won't do anything at this point. He just grabs the magic screw, and seeing his life is only at 1100. And I have 3 flyers. His Maribella is not going to do anything. So all this damage is going to come through. There's another 1300 that puts him at 0 just with my flyers. And I had the Levantine, so I could have flipped Milium as well, but it made more sense just to swing in with the flyers and call it a game. So moving into game 2, Ralph is choosing to go first as again. He wants to combo off, which makes a lot of sense. In the sense of, even because he doesn't have Energize, he has to hit the turn 1 elf or something like that in order to be able to start his combo off. So it makes more sense for him to do that, even though he's giving me the Energize. So it gets that turn 1 greenstone. This time he gets the Sacred Elf, or the Moonbreeze Elf, which is much safer for him because it can't be attacked. So now if he taps it out, he's not going to be kind of ramped behind, which is really advantageous, as opposed to Sacred Elf, which can be popped. So you saw in game 1, every single time that elf tapped on his turn, it just died, which is really disrupting to his combo. So now his Moonbreeze Elf is completely safe. So he grabs that Clockwork Soldier, pretty standard kind of turn 1 search. Wants to get those pieces. Eventually he'll search for things like Magic Screw, the Dragon, the Addition. If he gets high enough, maybe even a Maribel. But he's probably going to see things like Maribella and stuff like that to be able to help him grab those combo pieces. So drawing into turn. See, he draws into the Dragon. I guess the Remote Control Beast is what it's actually called, but it looks kind of like a dragon thing. So taps for stone, gets that second green source, plays the other Sacred Elf, or the other elf, the Sacred Elf. which is not good because he's going to be able to ramp here into next up. If he has the pieces, he could combo off next turn at this point. Plays the Clockwork Soldier. And we're looking at it and we're realizing that he tapped his stones wrong there. He produced a green when he didn't need to. That's what we're talking about here. Yeah. So we want to make sure he tapped the right amount of mana. He didn't need to pay 2 for it. He only needed to pay 1. And he passes the turn. So this is a good start for Ralph. It's that natural kind of, he's putting on board state while being able to search for his bigger cards and maintaining the advantage in terms of will. Really, really good start for him. So call for stone. Now I have to figure out whether or not he's going to combo off next turn is the problem here. So I played the Monkey Trapped in Life, which is a nice little blocker for me. It's, you know, every single time it dies, I have to pay 100 life, but it comes back to my hand. So that's pretty okay. It's kind of like the new Rasputin. So it's cheaper and it's mandatory, and it just kind of keeps coming back. And then I play Pandora's Mark of Hope. Now the thought here is, do I energize and go ahead and attach to Monkey Trapped in Life or Wendy, or do I just kind of sit and wait and see what happens? And the trick here is I have double Red Riding Hood in hand. So the thought is, if I energize now, then I can't play double Red Riding Hood next turn if I need to. And that's the concern in terms of if he combos off next turn and does Judgment and then puts all those creatures in play. But so I'm thinking about it a little bit, but I think the right play here is just to wait and see what happens, because at worst he's gonna put a bunch of creatures on board because he's not gonna be able to play the library and flip. So even if he puts a tons of creatures on board, I'm gonna see that and I'm gonna have a chance to respond, which is pretty good. So he searches for that scout plane to get the flying, recovers. Go ahead and taps for stone. Which is great for me. Every turn he doesn't flip is a turn that I can build some board presence and advantage. Place that Maribella. And out comes the scout plane. Again, tapping down the Moonbreeze Elf because it's completely safe. He does end up paying 1 more to play the Remote Control Beast because he has 3 machines on the board, and so that's only going to cost him 1. So drawing into my turn, I'm going to tap for a stone. I'm going to go ahead and pay 1 to bestow my Pandora's Mark of Hope onto my Wendy. So she is now an 8/9. This is very, very strong. So we're going to go ahead and attack into the Sacred Elf. He's going to go and block with Maribella, and that's fine. He's going to grab the Maribella Insane Self-War Machine. Then I'm going to play Red Riding Hood, which will recover. And then at that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the turn. So I'm still sitting on my Dreams of Flight, as you see in my hand, but I've got a board to be able to answer him. He still doesn't have any red, so if he flips over this turn, it's all just creatures. So even though he's got way more creatures than me, I've got a way to ramp, I've got a way to deal with any of his big dudes. I do have a way to deal with his flyer. And I've got that kind of repeatable blocker in the form of Monkey. So I'm feeling pretty safe here. Now Ralph's in a position where putting a bunch of creatures on board wouldn't be a terrible idea, especially since I'm sitting at only 3 will. So if he puts a big enough pressure, yes, he might not be able to kill me this turn, but the following turn is probably going to be able to be a lot of damage, especially based on how many Mary Bells he's had, the software machines he has. But he does go ahead and tap for stone. He's trying to get that library. He hits the red source, which is really good for him. So if he has a library, he can now come into play and start making some moves. I think he does actually have it in hand at this point. Space for 2 because he has 3 resonators with no attribute. Maribella's works, so he gets to draw 2 cards for only 2 will, which is really good. Plays 2 more, 3 more. Plays a Machina. So now he can search for any void card he wants. He grabs another Mary Bell self-aware machine. So he's got a lot of cards in hand. Now with only 1 stone, he's not going to be able to play library, which is pretty nice for me. So he's going to swing in the air. I'm going to go ahead and just accept the 5 damage. And then he's just going to pass, I believe, at this point, which makes sense. He doesn't want me to ramp. It's free damage. He doesn't want to cycle my monkey, which gives me a free Wendy untap trigger and all kinds of different stuff. So that's pretty good for me. Or pretty good for him to do. Now I'm in a position where I have to start answering, because if he does library plus judgment next turn, I'm in some big trouble. So I have to figure out a way to, and I do have that manifestation of power to be able to answer the library, which is fine, but it's still getting to a point where I need to start responding to these creatures and getting stuff off board. So what I'm going to do is during my upkeep, I'm going to go ahead and use the Energize for Dreams of Flight. Or I'm thinking about it anyway, but that is the most optimal play here. So I'm going to spend it to use Dreams of Flight on good old Wendy, who gets an extra +2/+2 for the turn, so she is a 10/11 with flying. And then that good old Energized token is gone. I tap for stone, kill the Sacred Elf, because again that pushes him back to where he can't play library and flip in the same turn. I'm gonna pay 2 to play another Red Riding Hood, which again, it's a good blocker, which also ramps me to my combo finish. And then I feel like I'm going to take care of that scout plane as well. Yep, so I'm going to kill the scout. Thinking about, I guess, killing the scout plane as well. If I do this, he has only, essentially, if he flips and I have the power manifestation to deal with the library, he only has 2 creatures, or 3 creatures that can attack, and I've got 3 blockers. So I'm not taking any damage from any of that stuff, and I'm actually ramping way ahead. And when I have Hook in my hand, that feels really, really good. Especially since I also have the spell that lets me search for some wonderful fairy tales to get back into my hand, to get back in the game. So I can just, play the hook and then search for another hook for next turn, and then just continue the pressure moving forward. So moving into Ralph's turn here. He's at a point where he can do Judgment and play Library at the same time. But he does have that Maribella engraved, so if he's got a self-aware machine, he'll be able to make that happen. So he does tap for the second stone. Gets another green stone. So at this point, he'd be able to do Judgment and play Library. But he is just going to play Library off the cuff, which is perfectly fine. I've got to deal with the swiftness and stuff, and I do have that Manifestation of Power in my hand. Then he's going to use the Maribella Engrave to produce 2 Void to play Maribella the Self-Aware Machine. So in response to that coming out, I'm going to go ahead and use the Manifestation of Power that I have in my hand in the same way. It's that kind of, I bait him to make a big play, and then I steal his swiftness away so he taps out, thus not getting the full advantage of his kind of investment. Still, though, Self-Aware Machine is a big creature, but I do have that hook in my hand, so I have ways to be able to answer it. And the other thing that's really nice is once I get that 5th stone, those Red Riding Hoods become 7/7s, which are really, really good stat-wise. It's a nice little stat bump. Puts me over top of his Machina, his Clockwork Soldier. Pretty much any of his smaller creatures are going to be just too small at that point. So he pays 1, and he puts a Magic Screw on the Maribella Self-Aware Machine, which I'm not quite sure is the right play here. But he does want to make it really big, and then he just chooses not to attack, which makes sense. He's not going to be able to push damage, and again, he's just ramping me further ahead, so there's no point there. Get that 5th stone. He is tapped out, so my moves are now kind of really, really safe. So out comes the Hook, Captain Hook, so I get to put 2 creatures back in his hand. And the 2 that I'm going to shoot for here are the Maribella Self-Aware Machine and the Clockwork Soldier. And now the reason why I'm doing this is I have an answer to the dragon, so it's not that big of a deal. And the Clockwork Soldier is kind of a less ideal combo piece for him to bring out. But if I put the dragon back in his hand, then he'd probably be able to combo off, put a bunch of creatures on, and put the dragon back into the field anyway. So this way, it's still there, yes, and it can attack, yes, but I definitely have an answer to it, so I'd rather not have him be able to just... He'd probably just be able to put it right back into his hand anyway, as opposed to if he plays... with the Clockwork, he'd probably have to pay 1, because he's probably not going to want to flip and bring out a Clockwork Soldier with his combo. So that's why I do it the way that I did, to kind of minimize the impact of his combo slam down. So 1 Self-Aware Machine, 2 Self-Aware Machines, and 3 Self-Aware Machines, all with swiftness, because he's got that library out, which is not good for me. But again, I have the Red Riding Hoods, I have the Monkey Trapped in Life. He can just hard cast Maribella's Works for free, which lets him draw 2 cards. He is tapped out, so none of that stuff is really going to come into play, unless he's got another one of the Clockwork Beasts, or Remote Control Beasts. So he swings for 8. I'm going to go ahead and block with Wendy, who has 9 defense and 8 attack, so that's going to just die. He's going to swing for 4. I'm going to go ahead and block with Hook, so that'll get killed. I honestly don't know if I would have swung with anything other than the Maribellas. Because again, he does need to have some blockers here. So swing for 12. I'm going to take 5 and block and get a trigger with Red Riding Hood because of Pierce. so I'm going to take the 500. He's going to swing with another Maribel. Now, here's where the trick becomes here. This is a legitimate decision of whether or not I block with the Monkey Trapped in Life or Red Riding Hood. So if I block with Monkey Trapped in Life, I'm still going to take essentially 12 damage because it's 11 to face plus 1 for paying to bring Monkey back to my hand. And then there's no guarantee that he actually swings with the third, letting me ramp up with Red Riding Hood. And I have to push back on him really hard next turn to be able to survive here. So it actually makes more sense for the Red Riding Hood to get killed and take the 5 damage from that so that I can ramp. And then if he chooses to attack with the third one, then I answer with Monkey. But this way I have a guaranteed ramp, and there's really you see, like he said, he didn't actually attack with the third one, so that was the right call to make, because if he had just done what he had, I would have been 1 stone behind, which would have prevented this crackback from being kind of as intense as it was. So I'm trying to figure out my play line here. So I've recovered. So I've got my searchings thing. I've got my Dreams of Flight in the graveyard. So I'm going to tap for another stone. So pay 1 for the Dreams of Flight. So now Wendy has flying, and he can't answer that. He's got no way to cancel it. He's got no way to boost it up. It's almost a +5, but it ended up being a +3. So she's now an 11-12 flyer for the turn. So I swing for 11. He has to take that damage. He goes down to 29. Play the Summoning from the Fairy Tale World or something like that, which lets me get 2 more Fairy Tales out. I start to grab Little Red, but that doesn't make much sense, so I'm just going to grab 2 Tinkerbells because it's the most cost effective. So I play 1, I play Tinkerbell, which recovers my Wendy. I swing in the air for another 11, and he can't answer that. Play the other Tinkerbell, recovers my Wendy. I swing in the air, and he can't answer that, puts him down to 7. And then I just play another Wendy, which recovers my first Wendy. And then I swing in the air for 11, and he can't answer that. So just like that, 40 damage. And that is the match. So let me know what you guys thought of this. Deck profiles will be up this week, Friday and Saturday. Huge thanks to Ralph, and until next time, DMO73 signing off.